Members of the Rancho Rio Grande chapter of the El Camino Real de los Tejas National Trail Association welcome you to join us for a virtual tour of the Spanish and indigenous peoples' historical assets in Milam County, Texas. This presentation is the story of Spanish exploration and development during the 18th century. These lands had been occupied for thousands of years by the native people, and indeed, their contributions to guide and support early Spanish explorers were invaluable to their success. Our focus will be on the route taken by Domingo Ramon's expedition in 1716, whose task was to develop a road to the eastern edge of the Tejas province and establish 4 missions. This expedition was the first step in establishing Los Adayes, a presidio on the eastern edge of New Spain, just inside current-day Louisiana. The Spanish, justifiably mindful of French incursion into what they had claimed as their territory, wished to establish assets in the region. The presentation will discuss the history of Ramon's Road, a segment of the El Camino Real de los Tejas National Historic Trail that passes through present-day Milam County, Texas. Included also will be archaeological sites of subsequent Spanish assets and the native people. French incursions into Spanish-claimed territory affected Spanish expeditions into the region before 1716. La Salle landing near Matagorda Bay and the building of Fort St. Louis in 1685 prompted the 1689 expedition of Alonso de Leon to find La Salle and Fort St. Louis. Shortly after that, in 1691, Don Domingo Terán de los Rios established 2 missions near the Neches River. The missions were short-lived as they were closed, and the Spanish returned to the Rio Grande River in 1693. In 1702, the mission San Juan Baptista was established on the Rio Grande River. The mission was visited in 1714 by Louis Saint-Denis, who was seeking to develop trade relations. This visit of Saint-Denis prompted the expedition of Ramon 2 years later. The Ramon expedition left San Juan Bautista on April the 25th, 1716, with a company of 75 individuals, including priests, soldiers, and civilians. After many days of travel and crossing the Colorado River near Austin, instead of heading eastward as others before him, Ramon continued north. On June the 1st, 1716, Ramon arrived at the San Gabriel River northeast of Taylor near the confluence of Pecan Creek with the river near the current town of San Gabriel, Texas. From this point, Ramon stayed south of the river and moved east to where Brushy Creek confluences with the San Gabriel River. We will travel by highways marked with National Park Service crossing and directional signs on the tour. As we continue east on Highway 79, we take FM 908 in Rockdale to the Mission Complex and Apache Pass. Approximately 8 miles west of Rockdale, we enter an area of rich alluvial soil along the San Gabriel River. Hills rim the valley on the south side of the river. Ramon traveled through this area before crossing Brushy Creek at its confluence with the San Gabriel River. This area of potential farmland would become the future site of 3 Spanish missions some 40 years later. In June of 1745, a group of native people from the Rancho Rio Grande, including the Yojones, Dedoses, Maya, and Irviripiami tribes, traveled to San Antonio to petition Father Mariano de los Dolores y Viana to establish the mission San Francisco Javier on the San Gabriel River, known at that time as the San Javier. Their request was granted, and the first mission on the San Gabriel River just east of Apache Pass was built in 1747. As part of the Spanish colonization effort, the goals were to convert the native people to Christianity and interrupt trade between the natives and the French. The native people were most likely seeking security in both food and attack from warring tribes. Archaeological investigation of the predicted site of the Mission San Francisco Javier commenced in 1968. Dr. Kathleen Kirk Gilmore conducted the archaeological research with a study entitled The San Javier Missions, a study in historical site identification. Dr. Gilmore, pictured here, did extensive excavation and definitively located Mission San Francisco Javier de Horacasitas. With the support of the Diocese of Austin and St. Monica's Parish in Cameron, an altar was built at this mission site. An open-air Mass was celebrated on September 14, 1997, to commemorate those early Franciscans' efforts. Although the site is on private property, one can see the altar on the hilltop from the highway. Having identified Mission San Francisco Javier, the remaining two mission sites were suggested from historical surveys and maps relative to the San Francisco Javier site. These missions were short-lived. A combination of drought, sickness, Apache attacks, an infamous captain of the Presidio, Felipe de Rabago y Terán, and finally the murder of Father Juan Jose de Gonzabal and another soldier forced Father Mariano to suggest that the missions be moved. Captain Rabago y Terán moved the missions and the Presidio to the San Marcos River in August of 1755. The establishment of the San Javier missions was a complex, complicated process with an intriguing history. Through the zeal, perseverance, and commitment to the native people by Father Mariano, Father Santa Ana, and Father Gonzabal, the missions were eventually made available. The first mission, San Francisco Javier, converted from temporary to a more permanent facility in February of 1748. Initially, there were more natives than the mission could support. There was a continual shortage of provisions. Having only a modest garrison with no established presidio, the missions were vulnerable to hostile Apache raids. The fathers distributed the tribes and their peoples to the missions based upon tribal affiliation and language. Occupying San Francisco Javier were the Maya, Irvirpiami, Yohani, and Tonkawa. The fathers decided to build the second mission, San Ildefonso, in 1749, downstream from Mission San Francisco Javier, overlooking the confluence of the Brushy Creek with the San Gabriel River. The native people housed at San Ildefonso included the Bidai, Dedos, and Orcoquizal. These people spoke a common language, camped together, and were intermarried. Also in 1749, Mission Candelaria was completed and housed the Coco tribe and their allies from the Gulf Coast region. Harassment by garrison soldiers caused the Coco to desert the mission. Father Santa Ana pursued them and located them camped between the Colorado and Brazos rivers. Sadly, people were also suffering from sickness with measles and smallpox. Father Santa Ana persuaded 82 of them to return to Mission Candelaria. A short distance upriver from Missions San Francisco Javier and Candelaria, we come to a park and restaurant owned by the Worley family known as Apache Pass. On this property is a natural low-water crossing known as Apache Pass that was used for thousands of years by the native people. The park is well marked with informational signs and has been the site of numerous ceremonial gatherings. Congress designated the El Camino Real de los Tejas National Trail a National Historic Trail in 2004. Apache Pass is also on the National Register of Historic Places and has a Texas State historical marker. We will return to Rockdale on FM 908 and turn east on US 79 for 18 miles to Gause, Texas. Arriving in Gause, we would turn north on FM 2095 to the Rancho Rio Grande archaeological site, including the Connors Wells, and the Bauman Village site, the nearby Sugarloaf Mountain, and the Little River Crossing. Ramon's travel east from Brushy Creek to the vicinity of Sugarloaf Mountain would be approximately 20 miles. From the confluence with Brushy Creek, the San Gabriel River turns to the northeast and soon enters the Little River that runs easterly until its confluence with the Brazos River at the Milam County line. Ramon's party stayed south of the rivers within an area that was heavily forested. In his diary, he referred to this heavy forest as the Monte Grande. According to the journal, they traveled some 20 leagues or 52 miles as they wandered, most probably without the aid of native guides. Ramon's march will be north of US 79 as we travel to the county's eastern edge. We now arrive at an area of great historical interest to the El Camino Real Trail in Milam County, namely the location of the Rancho Rio Grande. The Rancho Rio Grande was an area of many square miles where numerous tribes of native people would come together for hundreds of miles around to establish temporary or long-lived villages to support intertribal commerce and cultural exchange. Historians have long known of the existence of the Rancho Rio Grande, which existed over hundreds of years. Probably the location moved around over the years, and until recently, no precise location for the Rancho Rio Grande had been established. However, Dr. Lucille Estelle had long suggested that the Rancho Rio Grande was located in southeast Milam County and was crossed by the El Camino Real Trail, whose general route was established by the National Park Service. Several landowners, under the advice of Dr. Estelle, arranged for Stephen Gonzalez, executive director of the El Camino Real de los Tejas National Historic Trail Association, and noted archaeologist Sergio Irwegas, to visit several private properties thought to contain trail segments and native village sites that might have been part of the Rancho Rio Grande. In a single day, Stephen and Sergio were able to identify two sections of what appeared to be visible trail remnants, called swales, and view a possible village site where an enormous collection of artifacts had been discovered over the years. These very encouraging results led to the hiring of archaeologists Sergio and Melinda Irwegas of GTI Environmental, with funds raised by landowners to include the Connor, Bauman, and Wise families, patrons, and a grant from the Texas Preservation Trust Fund to conduct archival research and field surveys to verify trails and identify trail segments and village sites. Sergio and Melinda were able to definitively verify several trail segments and show through the discovery of some artifacts that the trail segments were used during the period of interest for the El Camino Real Trail. Next, we will visit the Connor Swale site, a validated and registered remnant of the trail. Note the characteristic long ground depression. The trail was probably used off and on for many thousands of years by traffic between villages. However, artifacts discovered on the trail show that it was used during the period of interest for the El Camino Real Trail as well. The trail remnant shown here is several hundred feet long. The trail remnant leads directly to a village site known to have been active off and on for about 12,000 years. In this slide, you see the hilltop identified as the Bauman village site. The trail segment seen in the previous slide would have led in the direction of this village. Extensive excavation by local amateur archaeologist Calvin Whiteley has produced a considerable collection of artifacts showing that this site was used for over 12,000 years. Sergio and Melinda conducted professional excavations and positively identified remnants of village structures. Note how from the top of the hill, villagers would have been able to have a panoramic view of anyone approaching from a great distance. This view was critical for village security. This site is adjacent to a segment of Pin Oak Creek, which is a year-round spring-fed creek with clear water. These factors, combined with the bountiful food opportunities explain why this was a very desirable location used over such a long time. This slide shows just a few of the many hundreds of artifacts discovered at this village site. Archaeologists can date arrow points based on their design characteristics and establish that some were made as much as 12,000 years ago and that others were made during the period of the El Camino Real Trail. Sugarloaf Mountain is a private property located off County Road 264 near the confluence of the Little River and the Brazos River, and is majestically topped with red sandstone rock. It is a unique geologic formation as it rises abruptly on the south side of the Little River bottomlands. It is very prominent when looking to the south from the north side of the river. Therefore, its presence was instrumental as a navigation aid to travelers. The native people were well aware of the prominence of Sugarloaf. Today, the modern-day Tonkawa Native American tribe believes that Sugarloaf Mountain is the creation site of their people, and Sugarloaf Mountain is sacred to them. They refer to the mountain as La Tortuga, the turtle, and its image is displayed in their tribal emblem. Later, the name Sugarloaf was given to the mountain by early European settlers in the area. Sugarloaf Mountain is recognized by Milam County, the state of Texas, and the National Park Service as a significant historic landmark on the El Camino Real National Trail. According to Ramon's diary, on June 12th through June 13th, they marched several leagues. They were received by more than 40 native people of various nations, of which one of the captains was a leader of the Irvipiami tribe. Ramon reported that the natives served as their guide to their rancheria. Ramon positioned his camp a harquebus shot from the rancheria. They stayed there on June 13th and created goodwill, trading with the natives. On June 14th, they marched with their native guides to the first river that they encountered. That would have been Little River in the vicinity of Sugarloaf Mountain. The rain-swollen river did not allow them to cross that day. Little River contributes the most significant volume of water among the many streams entering the Brazos River drainage system. Crossing the Brazos River below the confluence with the Little River would have been much more difficult due to the increased flow of water. On June 15th, with the aid of the natives, they crossed the Little River and headed northeast to a place where they would cross the Brazos River, leaving present-day Milam County on their way east. Ramon's crossing of the Little River and the Brazos became known in the diaries of subsequent travelers as Brazos de Dios, river crossings. Brazos de Dios, translated into English, is the arms of God, an image brought to mind by the joining of Little River with the Brazos. As you can see from this final slide, Sugarloaf Mountain's prominence on the horizon provided an excellent navigational marker for travelers after crossing the Brazos River and traveling southwest back to San Antonio. The following is a list of documents and literature used in the preparation of this project. We sincerely hope that you have enjoyed the presentation. Thank you for viewing.